Uh,
Uh,
I feel kind of stupid coming in here, show after show after show, going, I don't see how. And then they bloody well do. I'm like,
uh, has your
seriously.
mind been sufficiently messed with, kids? Uh,
I signed up for 50 years ago. Seriously, that this what we just heard was exactly the sort of thing I want from this music. When they do the completely unexpected, musically brilliant and sublimely executed genius of that Big River back into Dark Star thing, which was is a compliment to something that happened a couple of shows ago where they played Dark Star and Big River at the same time without ever playing either one.
yeah, I mean, it's we thought we had a great joke played on us in Boston the other night, but then they dropped this punchline on us, and that's
Oh
why these guys
man.
have been cracking me up for 54 years now.
Oh, I just and musically it was so great. But John was playing, licks from a Big River or licks from Dark Star that sounded like Big River licks. It was just so neat.
Well, I
It's
joked to
like you play.
David when they were actually playing Big River, the song, as we expected it. I texted David and said, "Wait, why are they singing these strange words over the chords to Dark Star?" Because they were playing, and then they went and did it. They subverted my joke by telling a better joke. Anyway, read the set list.
Yeah.
We got work to do here.
I will. They began with Bertha into Good Lovin', and then it was Must Have Been the Roses, and then that Big River into Dark Star thing that I will never forget as long as I live. Next Time You See Me, wonderfully played, and I noticed O'Teal sort of went into some classic blues style bass playing along the way, just kind of exhibiting different uh, approaches, and then they that went into Mississippi Half Step into a bird song that just went all over the place. In again, sublime is the kind of word that comes to mind, and the peak of this sort of collective conversational jamming that we love from this band.
Yeah, John told me mid tour he was finding these spaces where it felt like, if Miles Davis walked on stage and started playing 1970 Bitches Brew style material, he would fit right in. And that Bird song had a lot of that feel to it.
I would say,
Um,
and then I thought I guess Bobby thought they weren't going to have time for the last song, but John started it, and then I guess they said, "Okay, we better do it," and they did it. But
yeah.
they ended with "Don't Ease Me In." For those who don't know, so we're on Nugsnet, and we're asking you to check out what Nugsnet has to offer. And this live stream, I'm sitting here watching it from home, and I watched the entire tour from home here, and it's just been a wonderful experience. The camera work is terrific. The audio mix is spectacular, and you get to see the audience, you get to see all the musicians, you see them in motion and in interaction with each other, and it's just delightful. And then also, if you're interested, you can download the audio in a bunch of different formats, and they have a giant streaming service that's full of lots and lots of different music, including a nearly complete archive of Dead and Company's live performances going back to 2016.
That's right. And so many other artists. And you can go way back in history and hear music from the early 70s, or you can go and hear music from last night or the night before, because this music becomes available for streaming or download very quickly. It's
And
an incredible service. Yes, sir.
both Mark Pincus and Brad Serling told us about Grateful Dead stuff being available on the streaming service as well now, like all the Dick's Picks and Dave's Picks and stuff like that.
Yeah. So
It's all
plenty to
good.
look for. Just go to nugs.net. There's a free trial involved, so you can jump in, dip a toe in before you plunge all the way in. I have a feeling you will plunge all the way in because there's too much great live music there for you to pass up. We should probably get to our interview because you never know how short these breaks are going to be. So why don't you
That's
set that
true.
up, David?
We are going to spend the next, well, we did already, but we're going to show it to you now. We had a lovely conversation with Ed Pearlstein, a photographer of great renown, whose work you have probably seen if you've been looking at Grateful Dead stuff any time in the last 50 years. A lovely guy. He's been a great friend to me. He turned me on to tapes in the very, very beginning of my deadheaddom. And Gary knows him for a way back too. And before we put it on, we'll mention that we won't be coming back after the pre-recorded part. So we will see you on Saturday for the Folsom Field broadcast, and that Ed Pearlstein's photos can be found at oh hell, our
Music Images,
music. Jesus,
musicimages.com.
why did I go blank on that? I must be an old man
Well,
or
he'll
something.
tell you. Ed'll tell you in the interview. Anyway,
Musicimages.com. Yes, that's true.
before we
Yes.
go, let's send some good thoughts to Stanley Mouse, who
Yes,
has suffered
please.
a debilitating stroke, and also Tom Constantin had a stroke, but not as debilitating. Tom is on Facebook reporting that he's doing better. So
Oh, okay. Thanks for
please,
both of those bits of news.
to two great members of our community, we send you all our love and healing thoughts. And
Keep them.
we'll see you in Boulder in a few nights, everybody.
Well, I'm very happy to have our old friend with us on Dead Air this evening. It's the photographer Ed Pearlstein. Hi, Ed.
Hi, David. Welcome. It's so nice to be here. Nice to see you, Gary, too.
Ed, nice to see you again.
We've all known each other going on close to 50 years now. I met Ed back in the BAM magazine days here in the Bay Area, and starting in 1976. And we worked together quite a bit back then. But more than that, you were one of those people that was recording, trading dead tapes and sharing dead tapes and turning people onto this music. And you were incredibly generous with me in my early days as a collector. You introduced me to people. You let me make copies of tapes out of your own stash. You were a real ambassador to this music, and I thank you for that.
You're quite welcome. The music's here to be shared and enjoyed, and that's pretty much my goal while I was collecting, was to share it.
Yeah, you were not a hoarder by any means. And my introduction to Ed was an early encounter with Deadhead Street Commerce. I met Ed on the corner of Post and Steiner, right outside Winterland, where he was selling prints of his photographs. And I bought a beautiful one of the Grateful Dead playing in front of the Wall of Sound. I guess this was from 1974, obviously, the year they had the Wall of Sound. And I also bought a wonderful picture of Phil Lesh glaring sternly over the rims of his glasses right into the camera. And I put that on a wall near my bass amp so I could be intimidated into practicing more.
Did it work?
Yeah, I practiced a lot in those days. Yeah.
Very good. Well, Ed is also known for a number of other canonical photographs, most notably in my mind, one that was taken in March of 1977 at Winterland. He and I both had the habit of hanging out in the balcony at Winterland because you got this amazing view of above and behind the stage, and you could see sort of the perspective was like 20 feet above the drummers' heads, and you could see the musicians and the monitors and the audience behind, and you got this phenomenal photo of just this peak of energy. That must have been at the end of an encore or something. It's just this huge moment.
I mean, think of it as almost being on stage with the band, kind of hovering right above the drummers. I mean, you were very close to the band. The audience was right in front of you, so the energy from the audience is hitting you, and the music is hitting you. And fortunately, the photograph I took captured the energy, and it's been, I appreciate how well it's been admired over the years.
Oh yeah, it is so much a beautiful encapsulation of the power of the Grateful Dead in that moment when they were all intently looking at each other. You know, the guitars are looking back toward the drummer. Some big crescendo is being played, or it's the end of a great song. Or I always imagine it being during the first San Francisco hearing of Terrapin Station. It looks like that moment to me. A friend of mine came away from that show, March 77, where he said, "They've discovered the perfect riff." and it looks at that moment like a band playing the perfect riff.
And it was so rare to get the entire band in a photograph.
Yeah.
And you got the entire band in that photograph.
Yeah.
So
Indeed.
it captures it all.
So give us a little bit of your backstory, man. How did you become a deadhead, and how did you become a photographer? I know from knowing you all these years that you're one of those people who's the Grateful Dead sort of sparked your own creativity and set you on your life's path.
Yes, I about 1969, I got turned on to the Grateful Dead by somebody you guys know very well, guitarist John Zias.
Oh,
He
yeah.
and I went to high school together, and
Wonderful
he turned
guy.
me on to the band. And my first show was January 3rd, 1970. Second show was February 70, where the Allman Brothers opened up. So there's a bill for you.
Yeah.
And uh, I just I was on the bus from that point on. I was deeply into the band, and in 1972, I just realized that San Francisco was the center of the universe. A little altered state provided that to me, and I moved to California with John Zias and a bunch of friends, and never looked back. I dug deep into the scene
Yeah.
and went to every Garcia and Saunders show, every Grateful Dead show I could. And when the Dead weren't playing, Jerry was always doing something else.
Yeah,
So,
and also in that period, Bobby was with Kingfish, the mid '70s,
right.
not too long after you got there. You could always see someone from the Grateful Dead doing something, and your experience so resonates with mine. The two shows you mentioned at Fillmore East, I was there too. We may have been a row or two away from each other for all we know, and I think I was pretty captivated by the whole idea of the San Francisco scene from the first Jefferson Airplane singles hitting and all that stuff, and hearing dispatches from friends who had been there. But when Fillmore East opened, it was as though a magnet had been installed in San Francisco, and I was feeling its inexorable pull. I knew it would eventually suck me out there. And it took a few years. I got out there in 1974, but Fillmore East really whetted the appetite for what was coming out of San Francisco.
Fillmore East was so wonderful, just so wonderful in allowing me to hear some amazing music, some typical wild Bill Graham programs of
Mm-hmm.
putting different musicians together and different genres together. Um, I am always indebted to Bill Graham for opening that venue and for providing the music. And I ended up working for him. I ended up shooting the closing of Winterland for Bill, and continuing to go to a lot of his shows and photograph those shows when I moved to the Bay Area.
Well, so tell us when photography entered the picture.
So about 1975, someone let me use a 35 millimeter camera. A friend of mine, Bob Marks, a photographer for the Dead, also was taught me how to use the camera. And together we went to the Free Grateful Dead concert in Golden Gate Park on September 28th, 1975. And I talked my way on stage and got to just hang out by Keith and Mickey. I was already friends with Mickey, so it wasn't that weird. Got to hang out over there and shoot towards Garcia because he'd be looking at Bobby and Phil, and so I got a lot of great stuff. Some of my most appreciated photographs are from that gig, and it was probably one of the first gigs I've ever shot. So I seem to have had an eye. It was just a matter of learning the technique.
Well, it was only a year and a half or so later that you were, even less maybe, that you started contributing photos to BAM magazine, which is where I ran into you and where we wound up doing a lot of things together, working on the same acts, same venues. We went to LA together to interview Bob Weir, and that was
Yes, we
great
did.
fun.
That
So
was a lot of fun. It was one day we went to LA, interviewed Weir at his apartment, interviewed him at the recording studio where he was recording Heaven Help the Fool. And I shot pictures for that day in both locations, and then we flew home, and that was that. But
yeah,
it was a fun day, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and BAM was sort of the nexus of a lot of Bay Area converging lines. People who started working together in music journalism, and David and Blair Jackson and people like that. A lot of great photographers shot for BAM, and that was really halcyon days for music journalism in the Bay Area in general. There were great writers for the San Francisco Chronicle and Examiner. the alternative papers like the Bay Guardian, and the interest in the music. The entire San Francisco infrastructure was set up to support the music. Stations like KSAN, publications like BAM, and and photographers like you. And you were sort of, you mentioned Bob Marks. We are very fortunate, those of us who love Grateful Dead history and Grateful Dead imagery, to have benefited from so many photographers who kind of specialize in the Grateful Dead, starting with Rosie McGee, and then people like Baron Woolman, whose portrait of Jerry Garcia is right behind you, Gene Anthony. Recently, a whole stash of pictures by Ron Racco, who was not known as a photographer,
Those are amazing,
but was a Grateful Dead manager and record label exec. So you are one of the people who came up a little later than those people, and you provided an important bridge between them and people today like Jay Blakesberg and Bob Minkin, who are, very much immersed in the world of shooting the dead.
right? Right. And I only shot for maybe 6, 7 years, something like that, before I realized that I needed to support my family, because my girlfriend had a kid, and then we got married, and so I had to get a job that supported them. So photography went to the back burner, but I really packed a lot into those,
You did.
5 or 6, 7 years, and shooting for Bill Graham, shooting all the events like Led Zeppelin and Queen and Bruce Springsteen, and then shooting for the Dead, and being involved in their albums, or the books, or CDs that would come out. They used a lot of my photographs too.
Yeah.
And your stuff is available online. You shot a lot of different music acts in those active years you had. Please let our viewers know where they can look for your stuff and buy photos if they're interested.
My photography is available at musicimages.com. So you can check it out there. There's a lot of Grateful Dead there. A lot of stuff there's some stuff from the session you and I went to in LA with Weir. There's some stuff from a rehearsal that I was invited to in San Francisco in '76. There's images when the Dead let me shoot from the stage, which was a very rare honor. It happened to be in '77, June 8th. It happened to be my birthday. And
Oh,
they
nice.
invited me on stage to shoot the show, and it's a rare honor.
Yeah.
So there's photographs from basically the latter part of the '70s.
But not just the Grateful Dead. You got lots of
Right.
other different acts.
Yes, like I mentioned, Springsteen, Queen, Led Zeppelin, a ton, and a lot of jazz too, because for BAM magazine I was blessed with being able to shoot the 3 years of the Berkeley Jazz Festival. So I got Dizzy Gillespie, and I got Herbie Hancock, and I got Carlos Santana and John McLaughlin playing the same guitar on stage, together. It's just a lot of great stuff, and yeah, you can check it out at musicimages.com.
That's great. Yeah, no, that was such a period where there was great music available every single night. If you think about Bill had Winterland and Berkeley Community Theater and the Greek. The Keystone family had 3 clubs operating all at once. The Great American Music Hall. It was just a really rich time for venues, and you could go out every night if you had the means and the stamina. And a photographer could just capture so many different genres of music.
God, yeah, it's true.
And it was not that hard to do, because there weren't restrictions on photographers like there are today. So it was a lot freer. I could bring a camera into Winterland with no problem. Nobody would say a word.
It's true. And I was a writer, and I got to bring a camera along, and so I was a freelancer, so I got to take pictures and sell them along with my interviews and stuff. But yeah, it was none of this first 3 songs, and there were a lot of restrictions that came down after the years when we were doing. I mean, hell, I was the years when record labels would fly people like us across the country to interview and photograph their subjects. I mean, it was a whole different freaking universe. Really.
Really.
Yeah, really was.
And there was also, the bands were sufficiently local and not sufficiently iconic that they weren't surrounded by phalanxes of security. and you could actually get pretty close to them if behave in if you geeked out over them, then you made yourself too noticeable. But
Right.
if you looked like you belonged, even if the list said you didn't belong, you could probably get away with it,
Yeah.
and you told us, you had a fair amount of chutzpah in that regard, and that you just developed a comfort zone in you know not making yourself obtrusive, but being in the right place.
Right. And it also helped to have a press pass through BAM magazine
Right.
or to be working for Bill Graham. I mean, either when you were either with the promoter or press, you would get access. You get access to the stage or the photo pit or backstage, and you were trusted until you did something that, took
Yeah.
away that trust. But I was trusted pretty much, and I got some great shots because of it.
You did. You really did. Listen, you've got two radio shows. I wanted you to talk about those too, because they're available not just in Petaluma, California, but online. So everybody seeing this could have access to them.
That's right. In my retirement, I'm doing two radio shows. I have a jazz show on Mondays at 4 p.m. Pacific on KPCA FM, and I have what I call a live archive show on Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific, KPCA.FM. And the good part is you can listen to this stuff. You can stream it after the fact at mixcloud.com/live archive show or mixcloud.com/jazzed.
My spot boy, see you a spot boy, sitting by the fire. My spot boy, see you a spot boy, who's gonna set your tail on fire. Talk about hey now, hey now, hey now, hey now. Iko, Iko, ane. Giacomo fino anane, Giacomo fino ane. Talk about hey now, hey now, hey now, hey now. Iko, Iko, ane. By the bayou, my grandma see you can fall. Wanna fix your chicken wild. Talk about hey now, hey now, I go on it. Giacomo fino on it, Giacomo fino on it. Talk about hey now, hey now, hey now, I go on it. Giacomo fino on it, Giacomo. $5, she'll shoot you dead, singing Giacomo fino ane. See that girl all dressed in blue, Iko on it. Bet you $5, she'll shoot you too, singing Giacomo fino ane. Talk about hey now, hey now, hey now, Iko on it. Giacomo fino ane, Giacomo fino ane. Talk about hey now, hey now, hey now, Iko on it. like a rusty old door and shaking shocking moving on it. Talk about hey now, hey now, I go on it. Shocking moving on it, shocking moving on it. Talk about hey now, hey now, I go on it. Shocking moving on it, shocking moving on it. Talk about it now, hey now, I go on it. Shocking moving on it, shocking moving on it. Talk about hey now, hey now, I go on it. Shocking moving on it, shocking moving on it. Talk about shocking moving on it, shocking moving on it. Talk about shocking moving on it, shocking moving on it. Shocking moving on it, shocking moving on it. Shocking moving on it, shocking moving on it. When they come to take you down, when they bring that wagon round, and when they come to call on you, and drag your poor body down. Just one thing I ask of you. Just one thing, please forget you know my name, my darling, sugar. Shake it, sugary. Just don't tell her you know. Shake it, sugary. Just don't tell her you know. You thought you was a cool fool. You never could do no wrong. None of it. You had everything sewn up tight. How come you lay awake all night long? Still have to stand out in the pouring rain. And one last voice is calling you. And I guess it's